I'm too lazy to do an intro. Let's just get this started. Happy New Year, everybody. I wish I could have gotten this video out sooner, but I was in the process of moving out. I finally have my own place. It's not still definitely on my parents' property. And what better way to start off the new year than with a combat tournament? The Part New Year Knockout. This event was a relatively small one compared to my last event, but it was only a 15-minute drive away, and I like to compete every chance I get. Despite the event being very small, my opponents in the tournament were no wimps. Former champions like Venator and up-and-coming ones like RX-7 were there, along with a few others. I knew I had to bring my A game if I was to perform well in this tournament. I've only made 2 small changes to HellTongue since the NorCal Robotics Expo, both of which were made to try to stop the problem of HellTongue balancing on one ear when it was flipped upside down. The first change I made was I made the ears a little bit wider. That hopefully make my robot fall on my weapon easier, which can flip me back over if the weapon is on. I also went into the ESC settings of my weapon and turned on complementary PWM. This will cause the weapon to spin down faster, which is good because HellTongue self-rights better when the weapon is off. Although I didn't make many major updates to HellTongue itself, I did give it a massive upgrade in the form of an entirely separate copy of it. No more breaking my robot beyond repair and causing me to have to forfeit the 3rd place match. Unfortunately, because building an entirely separate robot is really expensive, I decided to cut corners by not buying any new hub motors and instead relying on repairing old ones. This would have caused problems in the coming tournament. And also, if you saw my previous video, you'll know that I have a brand new robot. Introducing Occam's Razor, my brand new ant-ray robot. This robot is really boring. I made it out of spare parts that I had lying around, and the purpose of it is not to be competitive, but for me to test out drive systems and ground game strategies, and also to improve my personal driving skill.
Now, I've already explained the changes that I've made to HellTongue, but I'm just going to go over Occam's Razor's design really quick. It won't take long, trust me. Occam's Razor is a 2-wheeled control bot with many similarities to the ramp buddies that have been taking over the NorCal ant-weight scene. However, unlike those ramp buddies, I designed this one entirely on my own. It is 23 centimeters wide, 4.5 centimeters tall, and with the baleen, it is 16 centimeters long. Despite this robot just being TPU on wheels, this robot uses the same thickness armor as HellTongue, and is even thicker in some places, so this robot does weigh almost 1 pound. As for the internals, I majorly skimped out on them, trying to build this robot as cheaply as possible, as this robot was built to test, not to win. These include 2 brushed MK4 motors from Repeat Robotics, a random dual brushed speed controller that I had lying around, along with a random receiver, a FingerTech switch, and that's literally it. Oh, I also had this ridiculously overkill 450 mAh battery I had lying around, and since I didn't have anything else, I just used that. The wheels had the same casting techniques as HellTongue and had a 4.5 centimeter diameter. Because I had some extra weight that I could use, I also decided to make the wheels ridiculously wide to make my wheels less likely to slip. The top plate was especially poor quality. Because I didn't have access to the college water jet over winter break, I had to 3D print my top plate out of polycarbonate. This also caused problems during the tournament. I probably should have just used TPU. And finally, I decided to make it possible to remove the baleen of the robot and replace it if it got damaged. One sensible design decision in a sea of why the fuck did you do that decisions.
I am still sponsored by the Kinship Center. The Kinship Center is a social center for neurodivergent people where other social centers may not have worked in the past. As a neurodivergent person myself, I wish I had been able to go to this social group, as the more organic structure of the center would have made it easier for me to adapt to it. If this sounds like something that you might benefit from, check out their website. And now, let's go to the fights. Despite this being a relatively small tournament, the building we were in was packed, because although there were only 8 full combat ants and 10 beetles, there were 40 plastic ants. Because of this, and due to the fact that I slept past my alarm and arrived too late, I had to sit my sad ass outside. Thankfully, I brought a jacket. Because this tournament was a little more casual, I decided to challenge RX-7 to the rematch, and although Blaine agreed, this didn't end up happening for some reason. although I did get to fight him, and I'm eager to show you the results. I'm going to go over my fights in the exact order I did them, so expect the bot I'm fighting with to switch a lot. My first fight was a rematch against Sauron, the first spinner I've ever won a victory against. It had gotten a pretty serious upgrade since I last fought him. It used a hub motor for its weapon, and it had improved geometry, and even installed some TPU forks, meaning that using a wedge against him would be risky. Although I was going to try that out, I decided to instead just go with my baleen, as they work well against TPU forks, even though it wasn't really built for horizontals.
Also, I completely forgot to record this fight. Thankfully my mom did, but there will be no slow motion. The fight started. I maxed out my weapon and I box rushed him.
Oh, Jacob.
Unfortunately for him, it seemed as if Sauron was having weapon problems. I eventually lined up a shot and hit his weapon so hard that it bent by 20 degrees. It was around this time I realized Sauron was unable to spin up fully, and I decided to slow down my weapon. I had full control over this robot. But suddenly, my robot lost all control for some reason. I was afraid that my robot had died, but thankfully, I reconnected soon after and resumed my attack. I then hit Sauron's TPU fork, dragging it into my weapon well and getting our two robots stuck together, so I had to wiggle about to get unstuck. Once I did so, I continued my rampage. Eventually, Sauron's drive began to suffer, and I was able to start landing large hits directly on Sauron's armor. One of my hits went so deep that it actually hit his battery, and another one completely severed his phase wires. At this point, Sauron's driver saw the writing on the wall and tapped out.
Let this be a lesson to anyone watching this video. Don't do what Sauron did, and make sure your robot works properly before you put it into the arena. Either that, or Sauron just got really unlucky during preparation. If that's what happened, dude, I am so sorry. With my first Beetle fight done, it was time to move on to the Antweight bracket for Occam's Razor's first fight. I was to fight the veteran hammer saw, Roof Eater.
As you can imagine, all of Occam's Razor's fights are pretty boring, and there isn't really much to say about them, so I'll make it quick. The fight started, and I immediately got stuck in a seam. Roof Eater was able to hit me, but thankfully, he didn't hit anything vital. The referee unstuck us, and we resumed our fight. Now, I know what you may be thinking, and yes, it's true. This matchup is really bad for me. I was able to get under Roof Eater several times and push him against the wall, but because of his hammer saw, I was unable to pin him as he could just free himself. Roof Eater was able to pin me several times though, but thankfully because of my robot's geometry, Roof Eater could not hit any of my internals. It wasn't enough to get the win though, and after 3 minutes had elapsed, the match ended and the judges ruled in favor of Roof Eater.
I'm not expecting Occam's Razor to win many fights. Its job is to test designs and for me to get better at driving. Occam's Razor will take the wins as they come, but don't expect many of them. Back to the Beetle bracket, and now for the moment you've all been waiting for, a rematch against RX-7! Ever since my fight where my weapon died like 2 seconds after it started, I wanted to get a real fight with RX-7. However, unbeknownst to me, RX-7 also got a serious upgrade. Its reach had been vastly improved, and it now has magnets, meaning I can't just push him around anymore.
But at this point there wasn't really much I could do, so I just slapped on my standard fork configuration and hoped for the best. Once the match started, we danced around each other for a bit before our first hit. Then we got into a pushing match, but RX-7 quickly outreached me, and then used this opportunity to hit my robot several times before I could even react. This left my robot incapacitated. One of my motors was jammed and the other one stopped completely, so I just tapped out.
After opening my robot up, I discovered in the short time that RX-7 was attacking me, he had hit my left axle, my right gearbox, and my battery. How unfortunate. Such damage would have been impossible to fix in the time that I had, so I'm glad I had a copy. It's a shame that the fight was over so quickly, although I hope Blaine does well in NHRL this April. Now it's time for Occam's Razor's second fight, with my opponent being another veteran bot, Park's very own Speedster.
Occam's Razor does not have any extra configurations right now, so I just replaced the damaged baleen with a fresh one and loaded myself into the arena. The match started, and I decided to use the seam in the floor to my advantage this time, causing Speedster to run into it and allowing me to get under him. However, Speedster started to capitalize on one of the Baylene's weaknesses, that being if you can get under it, the whole thing lifts up. In this case, right into Speedster's weapon. This allowed him to flip me over and over again, and I was unable to get the advantage again. And eventually, after a minute of fighting, this happened. Speedster hit my fragile top plate, causing it to shatter and exposing my battery, instantly ending the match.
No success with Occam's Razor this time. At least it could have been a lot worse. The funny thing is that despite me not winning a single fight with Occam's Razor, due to the way the bracket was organized, I still got 5th place. And now we return to the veto bracket once more for HellTongue's next fight. My next opponent being Pulverizer, a very durable horizontal spinner that actually functioned at this time.
Because Pulverizer did not have forks, I decided that running my wedge against him would be the best strategy. The match started, and I attempted to box rush Pulverizer, but he quickly darted to a different corner. This allowed Pulverizer to spin up, and he started to attack, but I was able to keep pointed. However, I then rammed into his weapon too aggressively. This caused my upright bolt to pull through, leaving my weapon crooked and unsupported. Thankfully, I was able to right myself, and decided to keep pushing forward. Pulverizer was having trouble stabilizing himself, and I tried to keep him from spinning up. He then hit me hard again. Thankfully, there was no damage this time, and I righted myself. Unfortunately, Pulverizer hit me again, this time ripping off my weapon completely, reducing HellTongue to a wedge bot. Despite me not having a weapon, I continued to try to do something to Pulverizer, and on occasions, I was able to get behind him and slam him into the wall. However, my robot kept oversteering due to not having the gyro to slow my steering down. Eventually, Pulverizer hit my right wheel, only making it worse, and then he hit the back of my wedge, ripping half of it off. My efforts to control the fight were in vain, and eventually, my robot finally died.
The reason my robot died, and you're not gonna believe this, was yet another disconnection between the battery and the drive. It seems that despite me taping together the connections, it was unable to deal with the shock of such a powerful spinner. Also, my power switch got ripped through the bottom of my robot. I have no idea how that happened, but that's what happened somehow. Despite me only winning one fight in this tournament, because both of my brackets were so small, I ended up in 5th place with both of them. It was nothing like my performance in the NorCal Summer Smash, but at least it looks semi-impressive on HellTongue's Robot Combat's event page. I said in the NorCal Robotics Expo video that was HellTongue's last tournament, but because I was able to repair it and also got a copy, I was able to compete with it again. And now, HellTongue is going to end where he started, with 2026 Robotronica being HellTongue's last tournament, this time for real. As for Occam's Razor, I'm actually going to make it a 4-wheel drive robot and give it a drive system that I want to test out. I'm thinking of using it on my next independent project if it works out good.
Yo, before I end the video, I want to show you something really cool.
Got me an MT-12.
The reason I'm switching to the MT-12 is that despite the Radiomaster Pocket I've been using being a good starter controller, it is more suited for people that are familiar with drone controls, and I've only flown a drone like 3 times in my life. However, I am far more familiar with RC cars. I've been playing with them since my early teens, and I actually used to race them competitively, even podiuming a couple times. So when I figured out that there was a Radiomaster controller that was just like an RC car controller, I knew I had to have it. And so I got it, and hopefully now driving will be a little bit more intuitive for me.
Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you, hopefully not 2 weeks after my next competition.